Welcome to CAAC 15. Yes, it really works that way, self-managing teams as the foundation of agility. In spite of us being within a day of the Ides of March, we expect to have a great morning together. For our first public service announcement of the morning, Julie Wilson is from IT, and she's here to help. If you run into technical difficulties, kinds of trouble this morning, please chat or email Julie. She'll get it sorted out for you if there's any sorting that can be done. If you look up Julie on Teams, you'll need to know that her first name is actually Juliana. And I got to say, and this may jinx us all, that in the 14 times that we've done this before, no one has ever chatted with Julie. Just saying. It's never happened. Okay. Andre is going to be leading our retrospective later this morning, and he's going to take a minute now to kind of get us started on that. So, Andre, the mic is yours. What instructions do you have for us this morning?
Well, it's going to be very simple, guys. Hello, everybody. We're going to have three buckets or columns on a Kanban board and Retro app. It's going to be what went well, what didn't go well, and what could be improved. And you'll have abundance of creativity to share your honest feedback.
Thanks, Andre.
Hey, sorry to interrupt you guys. Are we recording this session, Stephen?
Yes, we are, Srikumar.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep. So we're going to be asking for your opinions and suggestions at the end of the morning, just like we always do. So if you're listening now and you're participating in the sessions and you find yourself thinking, ooh, that was well done, or I wish they wouldn't do this, then make a note of it so that you can add it to that board later on this morning. Your opinions really do matter to us. And that's why we set aside this time in every conference. So please, please, please participate. Let us know what you really think about today's conference, both good and bad, and about what we can do in the future to make this a more valuable experience for you and for everyone else in attendance.
And in the process of retrospection, when we get there, I will read out some of the really good ones or interesting ones, and we will even ask you guys if you're willing to go off mute and go on camera to give us maybe a few words about why you thought a certain way or what your recommendation entails.
Absolutely. It's a conversation, just like all morning long. Now, for today's agenda, our first session this morning, Todd and Ariyo are going to start us off with a discussion directed towards self-managing teams. And that's going to be followed by our usual break at 10:15. Our second session is going to take a look at how the job of frontline supervisor changes after your teams are managing themselves. And after that, we'll have our retrospective and close out the morning. Well, I'd like to say that we planned it this way, but the truth of the matter is that I just realized last week that today is Pie Day. And I don't know about you, but pies are one of my favorite desserts, so I couldn't resist talking about them just a little bit this morning. So according to a poll that Instacart just did, their top selling pies in the year 2024 were apple at 29% of pie sales. Almost a third of pies sold last year through Instacart were apple pies, followed by pumpkin at 23%. Then a pretty significant drop off to pecan at 9%, cherry at 8%, lemon meringue 6%, blueberry 5%, chocolate 4%, key lime also at 4%, and then finishing out with peach and sweet potato. Now, this was, oddly enough, a really interesting article, and the AP did a great job of presenting the information a lot of different ways. Of all of the ways they did it, what they did not include was a pie chart. So I put one of those together myself. So here's that same information as a pie chart. And I'll tell you that my favorite pie is on this list. My wife's favorite pie is on the list. For neither one of us is it apple or pumpkin. So we're kind of in the minority there. But what we want to do now is to find out what your favorite pie is. So here's our first poll of the morning. And this polling, this is going to work for all of the questions we ask you through the morning. You can scan that QR code on the screen, or you can copy the URL out. Either way, that's going to take you to our polling station. Please go there now. and tell us about your favorite pie. You'll see when you pull up the survey on your phone that you have access to all of the questions that we're going to be asking this morning. You can handle that a couple of different ways. You can wait and answer those other questions when we ask you to, or you can get a head start on them now. That's totally up to you. So please go ahead and let us know. We've got one vote for pumpkin, and it's a big one.
Stephen, do you get ice cream if you choose apple pie?
You know, that's another personal preference thing. I don't judge. I'll tell you, my favorite with apple pie is actually a slice of sharp cheddar cheese. So that gives you a very different experience there. Okay, so that's 19 responses submitted out of the 72 people that we have on the call. If you're just not pie people, we'll let this go. But the next set of questions, I really like everybody to participate. So not unlike what Instacart found, apple pie seems to be the favorite of the group, followed by chocolate and blueberry. Chocolate is my wife's favorite pie. Mine is pecan, which has not made our list. Well, it's down there at 10%. So, okay, let's go on to our next set of questions. So now that we know more about pie, let's talk about Agile. CAAC 1 was held back in October of 2021, and that first conference included some polling designed to find out just how much of a presence Agile had in Virginia government. Well, I'd like to try that again. I've got a few questions now so that you can tell me how far along your agency is with Agile and maybe a little bit about your own understanding. So here we go. Again, this QR code is the same as the one that you just used for the pie survey. So if you've still got that one up on the phone, you can just go to the next question. So first question, what is Agile? Let's see if I can. It looks like with a little over 2/3 of our audience responding, then the overwhelming vote is that Agile is a project methodology, followed at about half of that with a way for teams to work together. I'm guessing that our presenters will take note of that. We'll go from there. Any more responses for question 1? Okay, let's look at question 2. Our agency has been working on Agile for 20% of us. For about a fifth of you, we're brand new at this. You add another 17% for a year or so, so you're looking at close to 40% that are really very new to Agile. 20% at 2 to 3 years, 26% for 4 to 6 years. About a quarter of folks with pretty substantial experience, and then 7 to 10 years in that 12% range. More than 10 years at 6%. So for our agency, VSP started this back in 2017. So for those of you who are on my team, if you didn't vote for 7 to 10 years, you're wrong. Okay, let's move on and take a look at the next question. The methodology we use at our agency is waterfall. That percentage makes sense based on what everybody just said about being new to Agile. Scrum at 38%, Kanban 24%. A few folks using SAFe or some variety of scaled Agile. Something else, it's complicated and I don't know. My role at my agency is, so we have about a third, not quite a third of the audience who are members of teams, developers, testers, analysts. Another quarter of the audience are Scrum Masters. So that gives us about half the room that are actively working on an Agile team. Or a developer in a waterfall process, right? 10% product owners, 25% project managers, okay? No frontline supervisors in the building. Senior leadership at 7%. That's interesting. And then when I think of self-managing teams, I think this will never work. Nobody's willing to say that. That's interesting because I've certainly had those conversations with folks here. And then interesting, tell me more about a third of the room. Everybody else, 65%. Wow, what a great idea. So I hope the morning is helpful to you. We're going to close the polling for now and move on to our first session. So Todd and Ariyo are working together at DMV. Todd Kamens has been an Agile coach and transformation advisor for more than 2 decades. He helps senior leadership to communicate the needs for change, to build trust in a proven process, activate cultural shifts, and define and measure success to achieve enterprise business agility. And Ariyo Ojagbamila is an Agile coach with a focus on guiding organizations through the transition from project-based work to a product-oriented mindset. He has extensive experience in Scrum, Kanban, and XP, and he combines deep technical knowledge with a pragmatic people-first approach. His goal is to create high-performing teams that embrace continuous improvement and innovation. Todd and Ariyo, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me just share my screen. All right. Oh, hold on one second. That's what happens when you have 2 screens. Bear with me for one quick second. Okay, you can see my screen now?
What we see is a cliffside and flowers.
There you go. How about now?
It's still a cliffside and flowers. There we go.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Todd Kamens. My fellow coach, Ariyo. We're going to split up the presentation, so we'll weave in and out as we go here. I have been working with the DMV now for just about 2 years, And we've made a lot of progress. So it was interesting watching the poll results. This is an interesting topic today about self-managing teams, because it's a way of working that I think we all want to say that we want to get to and be a part of a team that works this way. But it also is a big change. So first we start out giving teams the ability and the framework of working, let's say, with Scrum, which is a big transformational change in itself. And now here we come talking about let the team manage itself. So another change. And so today we're going to try to unravel in a little bit what is self-managing and what does it look like and what are some of the characteristics of it. And so we'll start with, traditional hierarchical structures. They really do slow down decision making, right? If you have to always go back to that decision maker, which may be a manager, to get an answer versus letting the team manage itself with some guardrails, right? How does that really change and enable the team to respond differently? And that's what we're going to talk about today. My slides are changing okay now? One thumbs up.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, Ariyo and myself, is we're going to start out with defining what is a self-managing team. We're going to talk about some of the benefits and some of the challenges behind self-managing teams. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the practical steps for adoption, but this comes with a lot of coaching and a lot of work at the team level to really, really make it happen. And then we're going to leave you with a real-world example just to show how this concept really does work. And the benefits of working in this way. And then, of course, open it up for some Q&A. So let's start first with the definition. So what is a self-managing team, right? So a self-managing team is where we have a group of individuals that are working towards a common goal with minimum direct supervision. They have autonomy, and they're allowed to make decisions about their tasks, their roles, and their processes. Teaching a class once, I was talking about this and the whole concept of self-managing teams and servant leadership, and someone in the room raised their hand, and I know we have some folks from the DMV that were former military as well. And a lot of the military, even though we think of the military as command and control, in combat, a lot of the military, they're given their mission and they understand the objective and the intent of the mission. So even when the command and control structure breaks down, the teams are still allowed to have that autonomy to make decisions as long as it's headed towards that common goal. Okay. And so that's really, really, really what we're talking about today is how do we free the team to come to that end result and come to solving that common goal without being on top of that team from a management perspective, really allowing the team to make decisions. And for those of you who've definitely seen a lot of videos on this, they talk about that oftentimes the teams will make better decisions than had we sort of guided them, because we're giving them that autonomy to do the work on their own. And so I wanted to ask a few questions here. And so I'm going to rely on Stephen here to help out with a poll. We have 5 questions that we wanted to ask. And let's see if I can see the screen. Okay, so perfect. So some people have already answered these. So self-managing teams require constant supervision. So the correct answer, you are correct in saying that is false. The idea behind the teams is that we're going to set some guardrails and then we're going to release the teams to go off and do their work and work towards that common goal. When we look at the next question, members of a self-managing team have autonomy, sort of written within the question itself, right, of being a self-managing team. So the idea is that we're going to release the teams to come up with decisions that are maybe even better than the original guidance that we gave them. The third question, in a self-managing team, team members openly communicate and collaborate. If you think about if you're on a Scrum team today, our teams are constantly talking with one another. They have the daily stand-up, right? The daily Scrum, but then we're also constantly collaborating. For any of the agencies that are fortunate to work in a more open space environment, typically, right, we'll set the team together so that the teams are constantly collaborating. They're hearing one another, they're working with one another, and they're making decisions together as a team. The next question. Self-managing teams rely primarily on individual performance. I'm glad that one is a false. So for those of you too that are working in a Scrum environment, you know that it's really all about the team's success and not an individual's performance. So we're working towards teaching the team and coaching the team that it is a team sport, and it's better to have the entire team working together towards that common goal than to have, let's say, one developer say, I'm done with all my tasks and waiting around for the rest of the team to catch up. And finally, our fifth question, members of self-managing teams actively look for ways to improve. I love it. So I don't know what 1% would get, but I'm guessing that was one vote. So it is a team sport. We're constantly looking for ways to improve and ways to help each other. So we can go back to, I think I have to click share again, right? All right, we're back to my screen. So let's talk about some of the characteristics. So characteristics of self-managing teams, the team members have autonomy. So they get to decide how to achieve their goals best. The idea behind these, and I apologize for the dog barking, for any of you can hear it, the team members are giving the work, they're the experts, and they are the ones that get to decide how do they achieve that goal. They have a shared responsibility. So it's the team that owns that outcome. And as we're working, and if we're falling behind, or if we're struggling, or if we have an obstacle or an impediment that we can't resolve, well, it's a shared responsibility. When we talk about decision making, we want the decision making to be a group decision. We have the collective knowledge of all of our teammates. So let's rely on that collective knowledge instead of constantly stopping and looking to that manager to make a decision. They talk about teams that are self-managing being adaptable. We can change and we can pivot instead of waiting for that decision. And if you go back to that example I made with the military, we know where we're going. So if something gets in our way as a team, we can pivot and we can redirect and we can still get to that same goal. And then finally, we're measured on outcomes. So yes, it's great that in Scrum, we deliver our stories and we hit our targets with velocity. But at the end of the day, we're trying to deliver that goal. We're trying to deliver something of value to our business. So we're really focused more on the outcomes and the business value that we deliver rather than on individual stories and individual, metrics at the story level. And the thing that I really liked about this is I was putting together this presentation with Ariyo is when you look at the characteristics of what makes a good self-organizing, self-managing team, and then you look at what the characteristics or values are of Scrum, they really, really overlap. So when we look at the values of Scrum, we talk about commitment. We want the whole team to be committed to that goal. We want the team to be focused. So there's a reason why when in Scrum, somebody comes up to the team and tries to distract the team, that built into Scrum, we teach and coach the team that you send that distraction, that outside work, we send them to the Scrum Master because we really want to stay focused. When we look at how a team operates, we want everything to be visible and we want everyone to be open to share their knowledge with one another. And in order to share that knowledge with one another, and in order to feel that openness, we have to respect one another. We have to have respect for one another and know that we each bring a different background and a different expertise to this problem. And we also have different ways of sharing that information. So in order to work this way, and I love that they put courage at the bottom here, is we have to have the courage to be able to respect somebody else's way of working. We have to also have the courage to be able to speak up and raise your hand and say, you know, I'm not understanding this, or we can't move forward because something about this way of working just doesn't feel right. So if you look at the values here, or the characteristics of a self-managing team: autonomy, sharing responsibility, making decisions together, being able to adapt and focus on those outcomes, and you overlap them with commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage, you can see how you're really on your way to creating that team, not a group of individuals, really creating a team of people that are able to adapt to this new way of working. And so I wanted to share a quick video, and I feel like it's hard to not share a Simon Sinek video when talking about team building. So I'm going to share a quick video that Simon talks about. What is it like? What does a high-performing team look like?
The Navy SEALs are one of the highest performing organizations on the planet. And a former Navy SEAL was asked, who makes it through BUDS? Who makes it through the selection process to become a SEAL? And he said, I can't tell you who gets through, who makes it, but I can tell you the kind of people who don't make it. He said the star college athletes that never have been really tested to the core of their being, none of them make it through. He said the preening leaders who like to delegate everything, none of them make it through. He said the big tough guys that come in with huge muscles, covered in tattoos, who want to prove to everyone how tough they are, none of them make it through. He said some of the guys that make it through are skinny and scrawny. He said some of the guys who make it through, you will see them shivering out of fear. He said, but every single one of them who makes it through, when they're emotionally exhausted, when they're physically exhausted, some way, somehow, they're able to dig down deep inside themselves to find the energy to help the person next to them. Service. Service. Giving to another, having their back, is what makes the highest performing teams in the world. Not their strength and not their intelligence. It's their willingness to be there for each other.
So
the Navy SEALs are one of the highest performing organizations.
Okay. So I thought it was pretty fitting that at the end of the day, right, what he talks about is teamwork, right? And those members of a team that show those characteristics are typically the ones that make it through the SEAL training and end up becoming good teammates. And so now I'm going to turn over a few slides to my partner in crime here, Ariyo. And Ariyo, let me know if I'm not advancing quick enough.
Yes. Thank you so much, Todd. Good morning, everyone. So I'll walk us through the challenges and the benefits of self-managing teams. But first, let's do a deep dive into what it means to be under a self-managing team and what it means to work in a traditional style. So in a traditional structure, the manager is responsible for directing the work to be done. But under a self-managing teams, the teams are quite exposed to things like the product, the vision, the market, So they get to decide how the work is being done. At the end of the day, it's all about, satisfying the customer, delivering some value. So they are quite exposed to what needs to be done at every point in time. In that case, you do not necessarily need the manager directing the work, which you would have, under a traditional structure. Now, the next point is a traditional team structure. There's a hierarchical decision making, but under a self-managing team, everything is very collaborative. How we get to decision, how we solve problems, how we even develop things like roadmap, understand the customer needs. It's very collaborative, and that's what you see. It's great that Todd actually mentioned how this tie in properly with the values of Scrum, where the team is actually collectively solving our problem together. The next point is focusing on following the rules. Obviously, in a traditional management style, you see that people tend to focus on the rules and the structure. But when you get to a self-managing team, what's expected of the team is to focus on value, on what's been delivered. That's the outcome, what you are delivering to the customer. At the end of the day, every user story is tied to a feature, to an epic, a collection of capabilities. And at the end of the day, it also goes to initiative, right, to corporate and strategic themes, and even overall agency-wide objectives. There's also a very limited employee engagement under the traditional style. But in the self-managing team, you see more involvement from the employee here, right from understanding the problem to be solved and how to solve it, and even assessing the results as well. Let's go to the next slide, Todd, where we'll talk about the benefits of self-managing teams. What you see here is people bring their whole self into work. They develop a sense of ownership into problem solving, and that leads to high job satisfaction. Every day that people get to solve problems, with that sense of ownership, that sense of transferring individual ownership to a collective ownership, it gives them that sense of joy, bringing their whole self to work. And this is what we want to see while we're transitioning from a traditional style to a self-managing team. Also, faster decision making, unleashing the power of innovation, enhancing productivity. This helps a lot when you transition into self-managing team, into a self-managing structure. People tend to have a leeway in terms of how decisions are being made. It's much more faster compared to going to a manager. The team can easily call a quick meeting, negotiate what needs to be done, and arrive at it easily. And also, similar to this is the improvement in decision making, is that we allow people who are closer to the problem or closer to the work to be done to make decision rather than going up to like the senior leadership. Obviously, you do need some sort of engagement from the senior leadership, but in terms of problem solving, it is it is left to those who are close to the problem to be able to put their collective intelligence together and leverage that into the work to be done or the problem to be solved. As a result of that, you're also seeing a reduced hierarchy and bureaucracy. So communication is very streamlined. It's much easier to arrive at decisions and be able to communicate them, accordingly to the members of the team. And I think the last point, Todd, we were talking about this optimized resource allocation. Because we also we're in a state government agency. So we're talking about optimized resource allocation. But traditionally, what we're talking about here is how this saves time, and also it saves resources, whether that includes money or allocation of resources across different initiatives. Now we go to how do we navigate the challenges of self-organizing team or self-managing teams. But first, we'll talk about the several misconceptions or myths that a lot of people do have when we talk about self-managing teams. There's always the feeling that they're chaotic. People often think of but it's quite surprising when we did the survey earlier that most people actually are like, wow. About 64% of people said, wow, this is great. It's going to work, which is very good for us here. So let me first say that most teams, whether you're in the traditional style or you're self-organizing, will in many cases will go through the Tuckman stage of team development. But with established clear boundaries and guidelines, self-managing teams are able to navigate this easily. I think there's a question. So self-managing teams are able to navigate this easily, the way they're being formed, and also storming where the challenges are, but with clear boundaries, they're able to move from there into the high performing stage where everybody knows what to do, and they're bringing their individual accountability into like a collective accountability. There is also a myth that they don't need leadership, but this is not true, right? Leadership just operates in a different from here, performing the role of a coach, a support, an enabler, but not necessarily commanding and control or telling the team what to do. They may, in some case, provide technical support, technical guidance, but not necessarily telling the team, oh, go do this. We believe in the team to be self-organizing here, to understand what needs to be done. For example, on a Scrum team, you have a product owner who's working with the team directly on a daily basis, understanding the vision of the product, how the market is changing, and is able to communicate that to the team. So the team is solving the most important problem at every point in time. There is also a myth that self-managing teams are only I'm sorry, I think I went on mute for a little bit. There is also the last misconception about self-organizing teams is that they're only suitable for startups. And this is not true. We've got a lot of research about how big organizations are actually allowing individuals on team to be self-managing and unleashing innovation and creativity, and the benefits are quite tremendous. So this just the common myth that we do hear from a lot of people when they first encounter the idea of leaving teams to be self-organizing or self-managing. But there are also potential pitfalls, which we'll go through in the next slides. Lack of clear boundaries. Like I said earlier, whether you are doing a traditional style or you are moving to a self-managing teams, when there's lack of clear boundaries, there's going to be a confusion about who is making authority. But the solution to this is to establish and communicate clear guidelines and expectations. And I think for most agile teams, there is always like a charter that guides the team into what the expectations are on a team, how to behave, how to even solve problems or how to relate with each other. All of these things are embedded in the team charter, in the team charter that establishes the norms and ways of working for the team. Interpersonal conflict. These do occur on Scrum teams as well, but I think the solution is to provide conflict resolution training and establish mediation process. And this comes it appears that this is something that has to be developed over time through coaching. The team will get along, but it does take time. Dysfunction, it may be a challenge to productivity at the very beginning, but by the time the team gets along through coaching with a Scrum Master, who understands the Agile process and how conflict should be resolved, this changes over time and it does get better. Decision paralysis, slow progress, and missed opportunities. The solution to this is to implement decision-making frameworks and encourage calculated risk taking. So let's move to the next slide where we'll talk about, the leadership concerns. So for middle managers and leadership in general, there is always that sense of fear or that sense of concern when teams are transitioning into self-management. Managers fear that, becoming obsolete, especially for organizations where, people's role are defined by being able to assign work to someone else. This is a major, major challenge here. Leadership or even middle managers feel a sense of loss that, okay, so then what do I do now? I think the next presentation will walk us, to that. We'll explain, how to navigate that easily. But I think the solution is also redefining the leadership role, as I mentioned earlier, an enabler, a coach, a support, but still embedded in the team. There is no loss of control here if you look at it, but it's just like it's shifted in a different way to an enabler. Accountability issues. That's also one of the things that leadership do struggle with. That how do we say, for example, let's say something got into production that was wrong. How do we, pinpoint who is responsible for this? But when we transition into self-organizing, into self-management, we're moving away from blaming that one person, right? We want the team to be responsible collectively and say, when it comes to embedding quality in everything we develop and we ship, out into production, the team is responsible, right? So everybody is monitoring what needs to be done, right from when we get the user story, right from when we actually start development, right from when we test, right from when we even do a demo. So there's that. So there's that sense of collective accountability on the team. We're moving away from, blaming one person, rather, and I do say this to my team every day, if there's anything, I don't come to say, oh, this person is responsible. I say driver one, driver two. So everybody has that sense that we're all responsible in terms of quality, in terms of, our delivery, in terms of how we satisfy the customer. So this is a very good way to solve, to address the concern from the leadership. Now, performance management, traditional methods here may not apply where you look at, each person and what they're doing. But when you look at the skill set in terms of how the number of skill sets on the team and how people are developing every day, I think this is what we're saying here. To move beyond that, that traditional, looking at your performance improvements almost every quarter, but rather daily improvement, people learning new skills, people contributing on a daily basis and helping each other out. That's how the team will grow. That's how it would mature. And that's what it means to actually operate a self-managing team. Todd will walk us through how to actually put this into practice and what, sort of challenges we may be encountering here.
Hey, Todd, you're muted, sir.
All right, that's interesting. I didn't hit mute. Someone must have muted me. So
Yeah,
obviously in 1 hour, I cannot teach you all how do we magically wave that wand and create a self-managing team. But I can provide some information that will maybe shed some light on what it could look like. So just like we teach all the Scrum teams when we define, what does a ready requirement look like? What is our definition of done? What does, how does the team work together? The same goes for changing the team structure itself. We have to define clear goals and we have to define boundaries. So we may have an exercise where we talk about what are all the decisions that are made in a typical team and which decisions are local decisions and which decisions are not local decisions. For any of you that have gone through some SAFe training, this comes straight out of SAFe. They talk about this a lot. But, making things very clear as to team, you own this, and team, this is on the bubble. Maybe we need to reach out to our manager to get some direction there. We need to talk about what are the capabilities of our team and how do we share that work and who's responsible for what. And we need to talk about how do we support one another? How do we go to somebody else? Or even where do we store documentation? So it really is a lot about, writing down and creating that team working agreement to establish that idea of this is what it's going to look like going forward. Then we can talk about creating that right environment. And this takes time, right? We can say to the team, we want you to go off. We're going to allow you to go off and work this way. But it takes time. And Ariyo mentioned, the stages of team growth, right? From forming, storming, norming, and performing. Well, we really need to show the team through our actions that we trust them and that things are transparent when we have issues. And we need to encourage them to experiment, and we need to train them, and we need, there's a lot that goes into, giving the team that bandwidth to say, we are going to let you go off, we are going to let you experiment, and we are going to let you figure this out yourself within reason, because we also have deliverables that we need to get out the door. So there's a balance here of how much are we going to encourage the team and allow the team to foster that trust and transparency, but we're also focused on getting things out the door. So one of the ways that you could do this is through your retrospective, right? Every team that's doing Scrum has a retro at the end of every single sprint. We could pause for a minute and focus on one area where we want to improve, let's say, our trust. Maybe there's a game that we can play. Maybe we need to bring the team together if it's a remote team that doesn't come into the office very often, but on our day of our sprint review and our retro, we're going to start bringing the team together to have more face time with one another. When we talk about the leadership role, remember, we're trying two things here at the same time. We're working with a team to say, we want you to work in this way, but we also, as coaches, we're working with the leadership to say, we need you to let the team work this way, right? And so when we talk about coaching and working with leaders, we need to start to teach the leadership that we don't want it to be directing and controlling anymore. We want it to be more guiding and coaching. We want leaders to say, here's where we want to go, and saying, here's a little bit of how we're going to get there, but then standing back and saying to the team, now it's your job to go figure out how do we get there. And then finally, at the leadership role, we want leaders to be removing impediments, removing obstacles, and supporting the teams in working in this new way. It is going to feel different. I didn't throw enough sport analogies in here, but if you think of, my first slide had a quarterback. If you think of the way that football works, right? The coach yells in the play. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do. But as soon as that play breaks down, the quarterback is not looking back to the sideline for what's the next play, right? They know that their strategic vision and direction is to advance the football. And so they're going to self-organize and self-manage themselves to make that happen. And that's the analogy we're going for here, is we want the team and the leadership to know that the team can make their own decisions and that they can get creative and they can experiment and they can learn how to advance the ball. And leadership can know that sometimes after they tell the team where they're going to head, that they can sit back and watch the team succeed. And so I wanted to leave you with an example here, and it's sort of fitting that, Ariyo and I are representing the DMV. And hold on one second. I just want to make sure that, okay, that my volume is still on. That this video sort of sums up a little bit of the benefits here of what it's like working within a self-organized team. So Please enjoy.
There are a lot of misunderstandings around self-managing teams. It's actually very simple. In a basic low-speed four-way intersection, the goal is to get as many vehicles through the intersection as possible. First, you might try placing something in the system like a police officer or a stoplight. With this configuration, you'll get an average of 289 cars through the intersection in 15 minutes. Next, let's try some four-way stop signs. Interestingly, experiments done with this configuration will actually average 385 cars through the intersection in the same amount of time, an increase of 33%. Now, let's try the intersection configured as a roundabout. Experiments done with this setup resulted in an average of 460 total cars through the intersection in the same amount of time, a total productivity increase of 60%. What's going on here? In the first configuration, all of the system's management is consolidated into one individual. He alone has to make sense of the system's complexity and then decide how the participants should respond. In the four-way stop sign configuration, the responsibility of managing the system is instead taken on by the participants of the system who work to coordinate the traffic themselves. The participants become more engaged and aware, increasing the overall attention of the system. There are two things, however, that still hold this kind of configuration back. One is the stop sign rule system, which actually functions as an external source of management by requiring every vehicle to come to a complete stop before they cross the intersection, including in situations where the stop technically isn't necessary. The second is the design of the intersection. Participants have to be aware of possible collisions that could come from three directions, and when the collisions do occur, they have the potential to be extremely damaging. All of these aspects are alleviated in a roundabout. All of the system management is done by the participants. Each driver enters the roundabout at an appropriate speed based on their own experience and judgment. The design of the intersection also works to make it easier and less risky for the participants to coordinate with each other. Potential collisions can only come in one direction at low speeds, making the risk easier to understand and less damaging if it does occur. Tremendous benefits are possible when organizations are designed well to support self-management. These organizations have proven to be more productive, more efficient, and more engaged. In the past, we only had to train one person on how to understand and manage the system. But to succeed today, we are challenged with the need to help every member of our team to understand those same principles, and to do so in a way that will be consistent across our entire organization.
So I hope I saw Lana's online. I hope I made Lana proud with a DMV related example here. But as you can see from that simple example there, it really is about, putting the power, I guess, or the control back into the team, but with guardrails, right? And so one thing that I guess I'll leave you with, and Ariyo, you can jump in a sec here, but you have to think about it from the organization, you have to think about it from the team, and you have to think about it from the leadership. And you're going to have to solve problems at all three areas. And if I could leave you with one word, that would be listen. You have to listen to the organization, you have to listen to the leadership, and you have to listen to the team. People that have not worked this way before are going to find it very, very different and uncomfortable. And it will take time before this becomes a natural way of working. So I don't know, Ariyo, did you want to add anything before we open it up for questions?
Yeah, probably listen more at the team level, right? Because that's where the challenge, always lie for a lot of people when you transition them into a self-managing team. They more like tell you that, okay, all I wanted to do here is just like, tell me what to do and I want to do it and get out of here. But now you are shifting the orientation into a more of them understanding what the overall agency-wide objectives are, what the customer wants, what the market is saying. So it's a lot for them to embrace, at every particular point in time. So it's good to listen to them and support them in a way that they can transition from that, just tell me what to code and I'll code that, to understanding what needs to be done and how, like I said earlier, each user story connects to a feature, how a feature connects to an epic, how an epic connects to overall strategic themes and agency-wide objectives.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the comments and I'm not sure where to start. So Stephen, maybe you can lead us here. There's a lot in here. I block it when I speak because I can't
Yep,
focus
I got you.
on.
Not a problem. So the first question came from Dawn at VDH, and she wrote that grappling with the deciding your role you can't just decide you're the quarterback when your role is the tight end, right? So the question there is, how does allowing the team to decide the role that they're going to play, how does that work out? How do you put guardrails around that if you do, or do you just let the team figure it out every sprint? What goes on there?
Ariyo, do you want to go back and forth? I can take this one.
Yes.
Okay. So within an organization, right? So I've been doing this now for 25 years. And what I've seen in organizations where that we have a trained team where we don't have some expertise, let's say, in a single skill, what will happen is a requirement will come in, and let's say that we have, I don't know, every developer is sort of at the same level, but we have a junior developer. Typically, what would happen is the developers that are at the higher level will be able to raise their hands and say, I'll sign up for this story because it's within their wheelhouse and their skill, and it's very easy for them to take it on. But leadership may have said, the only way that this junior developer is really going to get skill, obviously, is by doing. And so one of the things that maybe we did is we said this quarter, we really want this person that's newer to the team to get a lot of experience in whatever's on our roadmap, that first major feature. So what we're going to do is we're going to guide some of that work to that lower skilled team member and what support from a senior. So you're going to have to think about this, right? So we're saying, I don't have the skill to be that quarterback. I am the tight end, but you're asking me to play that quarterback. So what's going to happen is we're going to create a paired relationship. We're going to take somebody and say, we're now going to pair you up with someone senior. You're going to start taking more of that leadership role. You're going to own that deliverable with the support of someone else on the team. Now, obviously, you're going to have to slow down that other person's role, right? They're not going to be able to take as much work on if they are now becoming a coach and mentor to someone that's on the team that has not as much skill as the rest of the team. More advanced teams where they can take on anything. I've seen it before where I've had a team of equals. It doesn't matter who takes on the work. Anybody's hand goes up, anybody takes on the work. There's lots of hands up now. Colby's got 2 hands up. Maybe Colby's 2 hands work over Srikumar.
Yeah, Srikumar was first. Well,
okay.
I'll say that.
All right, so let's do Srikumar.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, that you guys have put up a very good show, Ariyo and Kamens. So my question is, my take on this is, are we leaning towards the waterfall method with self-managing teams? That's one question. And the other thing is regarding the accountability. So is it a plus or minus for self-managing teams?
Ariyo,
And also what my understanding is, there is no one shoe for all sizes. Like depends on the organization and the management, like where we need to be. I have worked in different places where there is no proper guidance, and they're all small shops. So decisions has to be taken individually. Like you have to be stand up front and do things. Sometimes that will backfire. Like once you go to production, things might get turned back and say, "Hey, why did we select like one TB of space? We could have increased the space, something like that."
So Srikumar, you gave us about 7 questions there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the second one.
Yeah, Ariyo, you want to take as much? Yeah.
Yeah, let me start by addressing the first one. Are we leaning towards a waterfall? I think with the conditions we've outlined for a team to be self-organizing, it's quite impossible under a waterfall where you have like a very strong management in control. It's just hard. There's no flexibility for the team to be able to embrace any sort of innovation at that point. We're telling them what to do, and they go do it, and they come back and get feedback. But when you're under a self-managing team, there is that freedom to be able to understand what needs to be accomplished, goals, visions. You're exposed to all of these things. But but when you do the traditional waterfall style, most people don't even know about what the agency-wide objectives are, and they really don't care. And in many cases, they can still get their jobs done without, knowing any of these things, right? But now we're giving them that freedom to understand overall agency-wide objectives, to understand the goal, the market, the vision. All of these things actually changes how people work. It helps them to bring their whole self into work. They develop some sort of powerful ownership, a means of belonging to organization. So it's quite different. I'm not sure if it's possible to be able to apply all of these things in a traditional waterfall style. It'd be so hard, very chaotic.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
know there were lots
Okay.
more questions there, but I also know Colby had her hand up, and we're out of time, I think, Stephen. So,
We've got another 15 minutes or so.
oh, okay.
I
So
can also address one more
Yeah.
that I caught. So with regards to decision, I think I would probably reference what Todd mentioned earlier with SAFE, that there are big decisions to be made at a very high level. You just can't, tell the team to just go and make all of the decisions, right? Things regarding how the work needs to be done, how problems need to be addressed. Unless there are big impediments, then you escalate them to the leadership level. But with regards to how the work needs to be done, I think we want the team to be able to get some sort of ownership here. And it's all in the name of unleashing productivity, innovation, and also helping them develop that sense of accountability together as a team.
Yeah, and I want to jump in. I know, Stephen, you added, and it goes with this about the boundaries. So, as most of you in the agencies, right, like we get state legislative bills all the time that impact us, and I'm working right now with a team that has some very, very new developers. And I noticed when we did our last sprint planning that one of our new developers wasn't working on any of the state legislative items. And I didn't say anything at first. And after the meeting, I did ask. And, these are things that can't be wrong. And the idea was that outside of the team, right, through supportive leadership, there was a decision made that said, let this round of legislative work go to the more senior developers. And here's a perfect project for this person that's not going to be working on these legislative initiatives to really get that person up to speed. And so that's where we call it like the three-legged stool at the DMV, where you've got the dev manager, the scrum master, the product owner, and really coming together in tight collaboration to make sure that we're getting the most out of the team at the end of the day, right? Because you're absolutely right. We can't just sit back and say, team, go figure it out. There has to be some boundaries and some guidance there.
Actually, I think, Todd, you and I would disagree some on where those boundaries are, because I absolutely expect my teams to be able to manage through bringing a new developer up to speed. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the team's responsibility. They can work out mentoring and assigning the work that matches relative skills and helping each other to cross-train. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a team responsibility. They've got to figure that stuff out.
Yeah.
So let's go to Colby. What question have you got for us?
Hey, so thank you. That was really awesome. A lot of good and new information in that presentation. So my question is, based on what you're saying, it sounds like there are a lot of skills that need to be developed in a team, and a lot of trust that needs to be built, the getting a team to the point where they're sort of living the Scrum values. In order for a Scrum team to be successful, that they really have to be living the Scrum values. But if you come from an organization that traditionally has not fostered those types of things, or you're coming from an organization where those things really haven't been emphasized, and so people haven't spent a lot of time sort of building those skills in that transition from traditional to Scrum, it seems like there's potentially a lot of risk associated with not meeting certain goals, which have bigger implications, right? So if you're going to fail an audit, or something gets, programmed in a way that, it's not working the way it's supposed to. So in that transition, like, how do you manage those risks? Do you have any ideas or recommendations on how you manage those risks so that the organization as a whole can kind of move in an agile direction, but safely?
So at the very bigger level here, we're looking at creating some sort of alignment and synergy, right? You're mentioning that we want to transition, but we've worked in a very traditional style. There are compliance issues, things that we have to focus to get accomplished. There are also a lot of issues here, but there's got to be an alignment from the leadership that we're moving in this direction. Despite the constraint that we have, we're still going to stick with these processes, these practices. They will guide us. So I think the key here is that leadership alignment. If you don't have that, it'd be hard to be saying, oh, yeah, teams, go and do Agile, go and transition, go and do Scrum, and all of these things, right? While they're not meeting compliance issues. So I think the leadership here is responsible for establishing clear guidelines on how we're going to work this way. Otherwise, it wouldn't work.
And I would add to that as well. We work with Colby, by the way, so maybe she's getting some on-the-spot advice here. So I think when I think of your question, the first thing that came to mind for me was from that last presentation that we started this conference with, and it was psychological safety. Because you're telling me I can work in a different way, but if you don't, through your leadership, show me that you're gonna let me work that way, things won't change, right? So if you, in the room, everyone's smiling and yes, you can sign up for anything you want, and then we leave the room and things are much different outside the room, then it's not going to work. And so I think it's, leadership really has to lead by example and show that they trust the team. That being said, it takes time. It takes time to really make change. And I know when I teach, oftentimes I'll talk about the grief cycle, and the grief cycle is through psychology, and it's really tied to how people process loss. This is a loss of control, a loss of ownership, a loss of decision making. And oftentimes on teams, we go through and we see people go through that same exact cycle from the grief cycle. And I think a lot of it is showing people that you trust them and allowing them and giving them that room to grow. It's not easy.
But I think SAFE also has a particular phrase that they use to describe this when they say leadership creates a culture of innovation and a safe space for people to experiment, right? Once this condition is taken away, then it becomes chaotic because people will not feel safe. So what you're saying is different from what is being implemented, and the result will be different completely. So I think the onus is on the leadership to establish that atmosphere for people to fail, maybe not repeatedly, but at least to learn and get the opportunity to improve on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll just, one last thing I'll end. I remember the first meeting I had with our commissioner, Gerald. He said something that I thought was really great, and I'll never forget it because I think it was different from what people were used to hearing. But he said, I want you to challenge me and tell me that we're wrong. And really, and I don't know if people are used to challenging the commissioner, but he straight up said, tell me. And I thought that was really, really great, is that we really do need leadership to show us we trust you. We're heading this way. So there's lots of hands up now. I'll let Stephen,
Yes. So we've got two questions that I think are would be really interested to hear your responses that are in the chat. One from Justin. Are there any practices, tools, or methods you can recommend for overcoming decision paralysis? And we do have, we're at 5 minutes.
Okay.
To overcome that decision paralysis from an organizational perspective, I think from the beginning, leadership will have to establish a clear timeline for every transformation, right? We're looking at, we often say that Agile is a journey of continuous improvement, right? But at the same time, you also want to say, at the end of 6 months, we hope to be here. We hope to have all teams, have a backlog. They got to mature in this way. There's got to be objectives and like key results attached to almost everything we do, right? So we can look back and say, okay, this is not working through a retrospective and be able to go, and develop a new solution. Then the second thing I would recommend is prioritization. What problems need to be solved at every point in time? Organizations are always confronted by a lot of problems, but how do we address them? There are frameworks. Some people will say, oh, solve the easiest problems first, but maybe the easiest problem is not what is the most pressing to the organization, right? So how do you establish a framework for solving problems? That's where we also need leadership. Some problems at the team level, the team and the PO can actually devise a way to address this. Culture of experimentation has to be established within an organization. People also have to feel safe if they fail, and they also have to be able to say, oh, I feel secure, I can learn, and then in the next, phase, I don't make the same mistake. And also, I think about uncertainty has to be encouraged. That's how people get to experiment. When you say, oh, we're uncertain about all these principles, but we're willing to try. I think I've seen this on, different teams. People don't feel safe enough to be able to try new things. If you don't feel safe, that decision thing is broken down completely. But if leadership can encourage that, uncertainty, whether that's from the market or from the team, it actually helps to solve that decision paralysis.
And from Ariyo at Tax, how do you identify or handle low-performing team members who may be bringing down the team's productivity and efficiency if accountability is only viewed from a team perspective?
So interesting. So I can try to take this one. So, well, I think it's easy to identify them. I think what you'll find, right, is oftentimes a team member, let's say, is struggling to deliver something through a sprint. And there's a few ways here that I've done it. So some of it is pairing up with more senior, because what I've seen in my career is there sometimes is the person that said, I'm going to take this work doesn't have a full grasp of what that really is. So they have the technical expertise, but they didn't understand the problem. But then you have the other way, right? Where they understood the problem, but they don't have the technical expertise, right? And so really what I've found is, and again, this is a team, right? So if you're finding that there's someone on the team that seems to be struggling, what I would do is I would recommend creating some pairing up of things. So you could pair someone within the team to say, okay, it seems like this area of the system, let's say, is not your expertise. So the next time we get into a story that's related to that area, we're going to pair you up with Bob, who's our most senior person. And then this also is an area where I think a dev manager could help us out as well, is there's outside training, right? There's outside coaching, there's outside skill development that can be done as well. In a true Scrum team, right? It's not so much the Scrum Master that's always going to be noticing this. It should be the entire team. And it's really anybody on the team's responsibility to jump in and help this person out. Again, I don't know, Ariel, if you're a Scrum Master, but, ideally it is the team. You look at, I know I loved my sports analogies here, but, you see a team, what was it? The Super Bowl, someone dropped a pass and the whole team stood up and said, we lost the game. I forget the guy's name on the Chiefs there that didn't catch the ball, but we lost the game. It wasn't one person's dropped pass that lost the game there. And so really it's encouraging the team that, we win or we fail as a team. And it's really a team's responsibility to see that somebody is struggling and to jump in and help and give them support. Ariyo, do you want to add? I know we're at time, but
and the team will be able to tell through constant coaching that someone is struggling, right? If a user story is supposed to get to QA for testing, maybe on the 4th day of the sprint, you're looking at the 5th day of the sprint, the test scripts are ready, but the code is not being delivered. How is the team, approaching this? How are they supporting the person, right? We have meetings through stand-up. They can actually check in with each other and see, okay, I'm almost done with my code. And if you're seeing this on multiple sprints, that calls for concern. I think that's where we also need the help of development managers to be able to notice things like this and be able to provide support, right? You just don't want to get out of the whole thing and say, oh, now this is Scrum, they can go do it. We need the middle managers, we need dev managers to be of support, constant support to the team. But I think the job of identifying when people are struggling is, for the most part, something that can easily be noticed by the team members when they're working.
Yep, it's all a team thing. Okay, we are 1 minute over time, but I'm going to get 2 more people in, so we're going to go 4 minutes longer. You get 2 minutes for each of these questions. Santhana, you're next.
Okay, do you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay. So let's pretend that my team went the self-managed route, right? So what is a unit of measure of success, and so that I can showcase to my leadership based on some factual data?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, a metric, it's hard to say like, okay, before we were self-managed, we came to our manager 6 times in the sprint and asked for help. And then after we came to the we came to the manager 0 times. I don't know if there's a quantitative metric that you could show. I think, Ariyo, I don't know if you want to jump in too.
No, we don't have quantitative measures to be able to say, but you can determine this if you're on the team. These are like ways in which we measure how a team is, growing and developing and maturing, not like real numbers or indicators, but you'll be able to tell if you're working with these teams on a daily basis, whether they are, progressing in terms of their maturity or not as a self-organizing team, whether through problem solving, through identifying, and resolving conflict, or whether that's through meeting customer demands. The ways of doing it will be a lot more healthier. They'll be in a very psychological safe space to actually challenge each other, to push each other in the right direction. These are things that we really can quantify, but if you're on the team on a daily basis as a Scrum Master or a PO, you'd be able to tell.
And I see in here about velocity. I don't know if you'd see it right away in velocity. I think over time you might see it, but I think at the beginning you might actually see things slow down, right? But again, we could talk about this for another hour.
And we don't have that time. So we're going to switch. Andre, we're going to go to Andre. Andre, we've got 1 minute. What you got?
Gotcha. So real quick, just to add to what Colby was asking, I think, and given analogies, which I really like, obviously Agile and Scrum framework is about support, right? It's about teamwork. At the same time, if you think about it, it's kind of like entrepreneurship. You have courage as one of the values in Scrum. You also have, basically responding to change over following a plan per Agile manifesto. All of that should drive your mindset slowly but surely enough, ideally at a more or less rapid pace, depending on the team experience, into the idea that you're given more accountability because you're trusted more, because you're respected more. So it's like, it's hard to find words or the parity between what I'm trying to say, but basically it's kind of like you either accept the idea that you're going to be one of the leaders, one of the servant leaders in that pack, or if you want to be a follower, maybe Agile or Scrum when it's already formalized and when it's already at its top peak performance in an organization, like a government organization or corporation, may not be ideally for you at that particular point in time. You have to be ready in terms of the mindset. It's very important to realize that. Other than that, like what Stephen mentioned, like he counts the team to get you up to speed in terms of all the minutia of training and other things. Yes, team will support you, but they will expect you to have those interpersonal skills to be able to hold the torch and to be a cross-functional team member. It's not for followers, it's for leaders. Everyone is a leader and everyone is unique in their own way. That's just my perspective on Scrum and Agile.
Sounds like turn the ship around right there.
It absolutely does. Yeah. All right. We are now out of time. Thanks very much, Todd and Ariyo. That was a great hour and time well spent. We are going to take a break. We're down to 9 minutes and 58 seconds. So we will see you all back at 10:30. All right, welcome back. We are just past 10:30 as we dive into the second half of the morning. I'd like to reintroduce Tim Roesch to you. If you've been attending many of these conferences, you will have heard from Tim before. He's a senior Agile coach and SAFe certified consultant with over a decade of experience guiding enterprise transformations across diverse industries, including state government, finance, insurance, and transportation. He has a background in engineering and business consulting and has successfully coached Agile teams, mentored leaders, and implemented scaled frameworks such as Scrum and SAFe in complex environments. His expertise includes mentoring leaders, standing up Agile release trains, and developing training programs for Agile methodologies. He's a veteran of both the consulting and the corporate worlds. Tim brings strategic results-driven approach to fostering Agile maturity at all organizational levels. So take it away, Tim.
Thank you, Stephen. Am I coming across okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me share. Let me know when you can see my deck.
Yes, sir. Looks good.
All right, it's taking a little time to form there. So I was thinking about this presentation. So Todd and Ariyo talked this morning about more at the team level. I'm talking more at the supervisor, line manager, leadership level. And when we got this assignment a couple, I don't know, months ago, Stephen didn't tell us what to do, what to talk about. We kind of managed that ourselves. We had a couple meetings over the last couple weeks just to make sure that we were aligned. And I was surprised how aligned we were, even though we hadn't met much over the last couple months. I had encroached a little bit into the team level, and I backed off of that. And so this was a kind of a great example of this self-managing. So Todd, Ariyo, and myself kind of came up with these two presentations. We think they flowed well together, and we did it without a lot of supervision from someone to do this. Darn. Advanced him. So talked a little bit, a little introduction. Like we did in the teams, we'll talk about leadership, how it's a difference between traditional and self-managing. I'll talk about the different stances a leader, a supervisor can have. We'll talk about some of the challenges as we get into this kind of environment. I'll talk about a few case studies out in the wild, and then any conclusions and key takeaways. And like this morning, I am presenting in presentation mode, so I'm not seeing any comments. If there's any real burning comments that need a direct answer, someone can maybe break in. And if not, we'll just take questions at the end. I see about a 40-minute presentation, hopefully enough time at the end of the presentation to take a bunch of questions.
Yep, we got you, Tim.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Okay, so what's self-managing organizations? Teams operate high autonomy. We got shared responsibility across the team, and we're making collaborative decisions. Well, shoot, if the team's doing all that, why does leadership still matter? Well, we're going from as leaders, line supervisors, we're going from command control to enabling and guiding. We're doing more coaching, more mentoring, more facilitating. We're looking at vision and strategy and building and or changing the culture of the organization. Slide very similar to what we saw at the team level. So at leadership, traditional leadership, we've got more top-down decision making, and now we're pushing decisions down towards team collaboratively. We're doing instead of doing focusing on control and supervising, we're focusing on controlling or coaching and enabling. So that's a theme you'll hear all day today. We're going from leaders giving orders, providing guidance, and removing roadblocks. And we've heard that with respect to Scrum Masters, right? Getting rid of impediments. We want to move from being a risk-averse culture, avoiding failure, to being more innovative. So you've probably heard the term failing fast. I'm not a particular fan of that, but I certainly get it. We want to try something. We want to experiment. If it doesn't work, then we've learned from that, right? So that's one way not to do something. So we want to learn from our experiments. Sorry for the real busy slide. So here are different leadership stances, I've seen out in the wild. So from the left to the right, we've got the more autocratic, do it my way or the highway, and the leaders making all the decisions. When I was putting this slide together, we see at the top, we've got these, decisions are slower or faster. I saw one presentation like this, and they were like, oh, the autocratic is making faster decisions because that autocratic leader doesn't have to deal with anybody. And that might make sense at high level decisions, but if we're at the team level and we need to go up a level or two to get, should we do a bubble sort on this amount of data? Then we are, decisions are going to take obviously slower because we have to go through one or two levels. So what we're trying to get, hopefully, is get more to the right, the more collaborative and more serving kinds of things, and away from the autocratic style. I believe we're making faster decisions because the people who know the most are making those decisions locally instead of having to go up a level or two, and they're certainly more collaborative because we're pushing this decision making to the team level and having the team makes those decisions versus one person at the top. So I'm going to just jump into some challenges that I've seen in my consulting world. Coaching is when we've gone from this more autocratic to more collaborative style. Letting go of control. I remember this was a few years ago. It was not at the state. It was a kind of a large corporation. I was coaching a team remotely, and we were doing a stand-up, or the team was doing a stand-up, and every person was saying something. Well, Todd wants me to do this today, or Todd wants me to do that today. And it just happened to, at that same day, they were doing a story refinement, and some of the people were saying, Todd thinks that's a 3. And I've got my notes of the people on the team. There's no Todd on the team. So I called up after the stand-up, and then after the second meeting, I called up the Scrum Master and I said, who's this Todd? And he said, oh, Todd's the line manager of these folks on the team. So there are a bunch of developers, testers, QA folks that reported to Todd, who was in his a line manager and owned, quote unquote, these people. So I had a little chat with Todd and said, Todd, we're really expecting the team to be doing this, to reporting their stand-ups, figuring out what they're doing day to day, and also certainly during the story estimation meeting to come up with their own estimates and not have you do that. because they're the ones closer to the team or to the work. And so I actually was probably spending more time coaching Todd than I was the team to get him extracted out of that. And eventually what we found was that he'd been a developer. He was the best developer, so he got promoted, and now he's a line manager, and he was still missing that part of his job. So we found actually another position for him as an architect. So I couldn't really fix that. I hate using that word. Fix that of him kind of involving with the team, but we did fix it by finding him another position. Again, overcoming resistance to change, same kinds of things. So I had not the same company, but I was coaching someone, and this kind of goes back to one of the questions we had at the end of the last discussion. There was a gentleman just out of university. He was reluctant to speak up in his stand-ups and was reluctant to do estimating story points. You just go with whatever the team said. And so he was just out of university, not really understanding what it was working with the team. And so I spent some time with him and his team and his Scrum and the Scrum Master, helping coach and using some of the same tactics that we talked about earlier to get him more up to speed. Pairing him with a senior developer certainly helped a lot. New leadership skills. So, monitoring performance and task delegation. In a traditional site, we're trying to spend more time getting our leaders, at all levels to focus on coaching, empowering the team, mentoring, and helping the teams and individuals to perform better and be more team-like. Maintaining strategic alignment. So we've talked a lot about this, and I think this answers one of the questions we heard earlier was, what are some of the metrics we can look at to determine if we are doing this correctly? And my answer would be, well, it depends. That the Virginia State Police, when I was there, we were, our strategy or high-level goals or mission was, in general, safety of our officers, right, and safety of the people in the state of Virginia. So if we are delivering, outcomes that help that, then that's always good. So we want the teams to be aligned with the strategy of the organization. Okay, and we could do that through KPIs and OKRs and things like that. And I'd be interested, maybe this will be a question I'll ask, how some of the folks in other state agencies are doing this. Balancing autonomy and accountability. So this same kind of back and forth. We want the teams to have the freedom to make these decisions, freedoms to determine what they're working on. But we want to set clear boundaries. We don't want them running amok. We don't want, if we have 2 or 3 teams working on the same product, right, the same project, we don't want necessarily one team to be programming in Java and another team programming in C++ and someone doing Fortran, right? Trying to integrate all that would be a pain. So we need clear boundaries. We still need architecture. Just don't let the teams run amok, right? This is a challenge, measuring success non-hierarchically. So how do we track productivity and success, especially individual performance when we have these teams? And so we're back again to outcome-based metrics. So customer satisfaction. When I was at Capital One, we were looking at money, right? How much money are we making? How much are we saving? Are we in general, are we internally, are our teams happy, and externally, are our customers happy? Rather than just the looking at output metrics, hours worked, tasks completed, and maybe even things like, velocity or number of story points done. Okay. This is one of my favorites. I'm a business improvement guy from way back, creating a culture of continuous improvement. So we want to continue thinking, not what best practices are, but can we improve them? Maybe we don't even use that term best practices, but improving practices or best known practices at the time, because we want to get continue towards improving all the time. So we want to use our retrospectives, peer-driven learning to help. Help. Yes.
Do you?
I thought I heard a question starting. Or we can address that at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, let's go ahead, Tim.
Okay. So one thing I would totally recommend, it's a little disquieting, is that the right word? So I've gone into, again, not the state, but some large organizations that are implementing Agile, and I'm consulting with leadership, asking them where they are on their journey in implementing Agile or making these types of changes. And I asked, and I say, for instance, Tim, I'm currently reading, and I've got 2 to 4 books on my bookshelf at any one time. And I'm, example, I'm reading the Toyota Kata, right? So that's looking at the Toyota production system. So this book was written, I don't know, 80s or 90s, talking about the Toyota production system, which is kind of the basis of Scrum, right? Crucial Conversations, another thing I'm reading. How to Make Friends and Improve, Influence People, right? So these are kinds of things I'm reading, and I'm meeting with the leaders, and they'll say, well, what are you all reading? And there'll be crickets. And I'll admonish them a little bit and say, okay, you've got this organization of 100 people that are reporting to you. There's multiple teams and multiple levels of this organization that is making a change. What are you learning to support them? Are you learning the basics of Agile or scaled Agile? And again, crickets. And so I've learned to kind of stop asking that question when I start getting those responses, and then maybe just, okay, let's talk about reading and getting up to speed. Because why do we read? Okay, we read for pleasure, right? We read the trash novels for pleasure, but we read to learn things. We read to not make the same mistakes someone else did, right? And so we could certainly make tons of mistakes on our own, but that's a long lead time to eventually get to where you want to get to. So what I suggest with leaders is, okay, figure out what your teams are working on, where they are, and I could give you, I'm looking at my bookshelf now. I could give you one of 100 books to look at, or to start reading, or articles or blogs to start reading. And then John Maxwell, the quote here, the single biggest way to impact an organization is to focus on leadership development. There's almost no limit to the potential of an organization that recruits good people, raises them up as leaders, and continually develops them. Okay, so we want our leaders to read and become familiar with what they're asking the teams to be doing. So as we're going through this change, some of the things we want to avoid: lack of communication. We want to over communicate. We overuse that term, I think, maybe not. What are we doing? Why are we making this change? We don't want to be dictating solutions like the gentleman Todd I talked about earlier. He was the puppet master of his team of folks on the Agile teams, telling them what to do, and was even sitting with them in programming. So at least he had paired programming going on. So that's kind of cool. Micromanaging, we don't want to be managing moment to moment, and taking credit for team successes. We certainly don't want to be doing that. Like Todd's example earlier, the gentleman that dropped the ball, it's a team effort. That the team did this, the team did that. A couple examples of self-organizing teams out in the real world. A lot of us has probably seen the little video on Spotify, and it's probably about 10, 12 years old now, but Spotify was looking at putting multiple teams on their music playing program, right? So they had teams, which they call squads. So you have multiple squads in a tribe, and a tribe is delivering a larger feature or larger requirements of work. So we have that the squads build up to tribes, and multiple tribes can build up to develop or deliver a large product. They had chapters, so we might have seen that as COPs, right? Centers of, geez, I'm losing my words. So chapters are like Scrum Masters get together on a biweekly basis and trade ideas on things that have worked for them, or it could be developers, or it could be testers. And then guilds are looking across squads and tribes and chapters, and these could be like a DevOps guild. What could we do, in our current roles to help support the organization becoming, more DevOpsy. Okay, so those are the different components of what Spotify was implementing. So their takeaway, they had clear goals. Again, goal, strategic alignment, whatever you want to say. That they had a strategic. It was consistent, and they had their self-managing teams, or these squads that were delivering features to these larger products. Someone mentioned turn the ship around. This is David Marquette. He was a submarine commander. He was training on one type of submarine, and I forget whether one was the boomers with the nuclear bombs, or the nuclear missiles, or the fast attack. He went from one to the other, and was not prepared for the new ship he was on. The Santa Fe was a different kind of ship than he'd been training on. So he realized he had 136 officers and sailors on his new ship that knew the ship much better than he did. And so instead of being the one directing everybody, here's what you do, and here's how you turn that boiler on, and here's how you, let the nuclear reactor cool down, whatever it was, he adopted something called intent-based leadership. He said, here's my intent. We're going to dive safely, and then everyone kind of understood what that meant. Or we're gonna shut down now we're in port. We're going to shut down the reactor to do maintenance, and so he did not have to go around to each of the 136 people reporting to him, tell them exactly what to do. He led this intent-based leadership idea to allow them, the people closest to work, to figure out what they needed to do. Third one is Netflix. So Netflix, if you Google freedom, responsibility, culture, you'll get this deck over here. I think it's 125 slides the last time I looked at it, and I just pulled one of their slides. They talk about context. So I've mentioned the term strategic alignment. David Marquette used the word intent, and context is their term for a consistent story, or a consistent way of doing things or their strategy. So they are embracing strategy, metrics, assumptions, objectives, and they're avoiding top-down decision-making, management approval committees, and planning and processes valued more than results. So it's a consistent theme we're seeing across these three different case studies out in the world. So what their takeaways were, transparency builds trust. Decentralized decisions enable speed and agility, again, because the team is the one that knows, whatever system or process the best. And they hire for top talent that thrives with autonomy. I think someone mentioned earlier, Daniel Pink in Drive, DRIVE, talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose as actually probably better drivers than monetary for satisfaction in a job. Getting towards the end here. So these are quotes I've collected. Oh, here's Daniel Pink again. I believe in the power of autonomy. When a team is given the space to make decisions, they feel more ownership and more likely to succeed. Daniel Pink. Patrick Lencioni. Empowering teams to self-manage creates a culture of trust and innovation. You can't lead without trust, and trust can't exist if you're micromanaging. And then I had someone mention this to me years ago. With Scrum, the team is empowered to make decisions themselves, which means we move faster. And often the decisions are better because those making decisions are closer to the work. So finally, just kind of put everything into one slide. We want leaders at all levels, right? I'm not just talking about the executive leadership, provide clear goals and expectations. Again, that's the context, that's the intent, that's the alignment. Ensure the team has a shared understanding of these outcomes. Foster trust and autonomy, allow team members to take ownership of their work and make decisions independently. Support continuous learning and growth. Offer resources and guidance to help team members develop skills and solve problems, and encourage open communication and collaboration. We want to create an environment where feedback is valued and everyone feels heard. And then I had some starter questions here. That's the end of my formal part of the presentation. We can chat about any of these, or if we have anything in the comments or questions.
There are actually no questions yet in the comments, though.
Oh.
We have a hand raised.
Okay.
From Agile Immersive, and welcome back.
Hey, thank you, Stephen. A long-time listener, first-time caller. Hey, Tim, I really liked your presentation. Enjoyed your comments on losing control or releasing control. And becoming more of a coach as a leader. I'm curious, what are some of the indicators that you're doing that correctly? It's really scary to give up control of a team. How do you know you're going from directing to coaching?
Directing and coaching. So great question, and we touched on that a little bit in the first meeting. And some of the comments were. Or some of the responses were outcomes. Are outcomes improving? Are we seeing better employee satisfaction, better customer satisfaction, more value, however value is defined in the organization. Less so if I'm a line supervisor, I'm less directive. I'm finding day to day, I am more curious. I'm asking more questions than making, definitive statements, right? I'm not telling people what to do, but I'm asking people, what are they doing? Have they thought about this? So it's more of a coach, when we've used the sports metaphor throughout the morning. Coaching more on being that curious way, asking them, have they thought about this? Have they thought about that? I'm not telling them what to do because I probably don't know the best way to do something. But when I'm face to face, right, love the whiteboard, love to get up and start drawing things and think things out, and letting the teams fill in the blanks because we've got a strategy we're trying to follow, or the intent or context that we're trying to stay within. I try to remind the teams of that. Well, here's the strategic thing, or here's the overall value we're trying to commit to. So it's basically less telling and more asking of questions, more me being curious.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Tim, it's Stephen. I think I would like a little even further into that question. I mean, when we first started doing this at VSP, I had 4 supervisors who were used to saying, okay, Scott, you go code this, and Satya, you go test that. And when we got into this and said, no, that's not your job anymore, then what we said all morning is, okay, those people are going to become coaches. And I guess my question is, what are they coaching? When I tell you, okay, you're not supposed to direct the work anymore, you're supposed to coach. Well, so what am I paying attention to? What is it that I'm coaching as a supervisor now?
Sure. So one of the things, again, going back to this morning, we talked about not a poor performer, but maybe a new performer or a not as experienced performer. So as a coach, and maybe and there I talked earlier about different stances. So there's there's coaching, there's facilitating, there's mentoring. So with that person that needs more experience or more help, I would be looking at your supervisors to be coaching that person, to helping with their personal development. That could be one-on-one time, that could be recommending things to read, or working with someone else on the team to help pair with that person. You're also helping remind the team that coach or line supervisor, you're also helping the team remember, okay, here's the box we're in. And that box is related to the value we want to deliver, or the strategic theme that we're working on, or the overall project we're working on, and not to step outside that box so much. Another thing I would look for them to do is to encourage the experimenting, right? We want to experiment. Is this the best way to do something? So in the Scrum teams, I've coached that we have maybe a story or 2 per sprint on experimenting. Let's try doing something differently. We don't know how that to parse that data very well, so let's experiment. Let's do a spike. Another thing I want them to be talking to their teams about is process improvement, right? So we don't maybe necessarily want them to be at the retrospectives, these line supervisors, because that's a safe place, and we can talk about whose fault was that within the team. The team did deliver that, but how did that issue happen? So we probably don't want our supervisor sitting in on those retrospectives. So, but we want to see them encourage those retrospectives. I was at a team, again, not the state, and I asked the Scrum Master, I said, well, send me all the invites to your ceremonies. And there was no invite for the retrospective. They said, yeah, Tim, we do the retrospectives. That's an hour out of every 2 weeks. That's over 1% of the time. And we just decided it was better to use that. And that's 8 people. So that's 8 hours we're losing every 2 weeks. So we figured that hands to keyboard was a better use of their time than figuring out this retrospective stuff. So I don't know, there was three or four ideas there that I would think a supervisor could be doing day to day.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions in the audience?
Were there any questions from this morning that we didn't get to? Maybe I could help with?
So there was one question from Angela at DMV about whether the use of velocity or the need to keep increasing velocity can undermine the value that a team is delivering, and how you avoid that.
Yeah, so that's sounds like a supervisor using velocity to manage performance of the team, right? And I remember when I was first a Scrum Master, I've got my one-on-one with my director, and he says, "Tim, we got to talk about your team's velocity." Like, okay, what's up? Well, it's only 30. I'm like, okay. So, well, Paul was my peer. He's doing 60. He's twice as good as you are. And I'm thinking, well, that's not right. So I knew why Paul was 60 and mine was 30. I was developing, or my team was developing new stuff, right? New functionality. Paul's team was more the ops and maintenance side. And I knew every time they did a form, we had to do forms at this organization to submit a change request. He would, jack up the points for those forms, and so and I knew it was not, really indicative of time. So my manager, my director, was using velocity as a metric, performance metric between me and Paul, which was not correct. I'm thinking if we just use that as a more of a lagging indicator than a leading indicator, we would see, as the team becomes more efficient and knows more and works well, understands to work well together, we would probably expect to see velocity to increase.
Well, and I think when you set it up and say this team's velocity versus that team's velocity, then that's a pretty striking misunderstanding of what velocity is, because it doesn't really translate from team to team. You can't compare that way. But metrics in general give you a larger problem, because whatever you start measuring, ultimately teams figure out how to game that measurement. So, I mean, we're all smart guys in IT, right? So we have to, as in management, you have to be really careful about the behaviors that you are incentivizing by starting to measure them. It's really important that leadership not look at velocity as a way of deciding who's doing the most work. It just doesn't work that way. Any other questions? If not, we can go to our retrospective for the morning.
I'm sorry, Stephen. Just one last comment. If so, I see my time on as a member of the CAAC as a helper, volunteer. If anyone has any questions, they want to chat with me offline about any of this stuff, I'm at DOE, Department of Education. You can certainly find me on the state email Outlook. So you just reach out to me. I'd be glad to chat with anybody about anything.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And Andre, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, just real quick question, Tim. Sorry, it just came to my mind. In just a few words, for teams that are a little bit more mature in the Agile delivery process, and they are constantly releasing MVPs, probably applies more to the commercial market, but just still wanted to get your take on it. Where even though we're all team members, we're supporting each other, we're cross-functional, and we have good amount of autonomy and courage to perform, where you have like stronger leadership within the team, And there is already some sense of competition going on, even though Agile should not be promoting that or supporting that. How do you deal with parity and balance of such sort of chaos for good, if you will, where people are trying to overperform themselves to be even stronger leaders within the existing leader Agile community, like as a Scrum Master, or maybe as a facilitator, or maybe as even a stakeholder? How do you maintain balance without hurting anyone, without removing anyone, without, putting anyone sort of back into their place from a formal framework perspective?
I'm not sure you want to put someone back in their place. Maybe I'm not understanding the question, but if someone's excelling and they're becoming a larger influencer across the team or an organization, I think that might be a good thing. I didn't hear that they were doing it to detriment to the team or to other people.
What I'm trying to say is that, just to clarify a little bit, when you have a strong Agile leader that knows all the foundations of the framework, knows major bottlenecks, and has a lot of accountability and also, in a way, ability to control their own work, but they are sort of already tapping into the realm of others where there are dependencies in place, and they're helping them as much as they're sort of in a competitive mode now, right? They're kind of like, I got you, I'll help you, let me help you out with this. So they're gaining more and more ability, not in a formal sense, but in an informal way, to control the aspects of the release, delivery, and even maybe a testing process. And thus their power leverage from an informal standpoint is rising. What do you do with that type of a personalia? Do you promote them? Do you put them on a different project? Like, how to best handle someone who is sort of an ultra agilist within that existing standard Agile process?
Right, sure. Okay, yeah, so certainly promotion is could make sense. They could, it sounds like they're reflecting everything that we're talking about today, right? They are influencing people in a good way. They're mentoring, they're coaching. It sounds like they might have certainly have an opportunity to go up to the next level or take on more leadership influence within the organization. So, and I don't know, maybe a leader within the state could mention what they might do with this person.
And the reason, just to also add to what Todd, I think, mentioned earlier, it really caught my attention about philosophy and Greco-Roman stuff, because I'm also into that, and I consider that being the early adopters of Agile, if you will. But it's like, when you are involved in the Agile process, because it's a mindset and because it's a framework and because it's a methodology and because it's actually work in progress, you get to naturally, not giving any specific examples, just in general, what I've experienced working with different people and at times myself, you get to a point of intellectual thought where you're sort of surpassing your counterparts in many ways, but you want to be in parity with them, to be respectful, to be supportive, to be at team level. However, you may be at a point where you sort of feel very constrained. You kind of like that phrase where, if I'm in the room where I'm not, where I am the smartest person, I'm in the wrong room. You always want to be in the room where you're learning from others, where you're getting that support. So from that perspective, in a very rapid release environment and a very mature Agile organization, how do you seek that parity between you're being part of something big where you're helping, but you've sort of outgrown what you can do, but at the same time, maybe the organization doesn't really merit the idea of you rapidly growing into the next role. You don't want to leave the organization, you don't want to leave your team, but at the same time, you recognize that, you could be doing more for the organization.
So Ariyo.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about agility in and of itself, true agility is with processes, practices, principles, they do matter. But I think at the very foundation is the mindset. I may come with over 10 years of experience, you know, having supported teams. I've gone through a lot. You know, I was one of the early adopters. Todd may come in with like 25 years of working with teams, working with, you know, big organizations to actually drive transformation. But there's always something to learn on a daily basis when you interact with people. You just have to be humble enough to realize that. There's always a new insight in how you work with team, how you work with leadership. If you're careful enough, and I have seen this here at DMV, I do tell my teams, I do tell my scrum masters, I learn every day at the DMV, right? So it's humbling yourself enough to be able to see every opportunity as a learning environment. Just the challenges, they may be similar, but they manifest in different ways. So how do you apply your skills to actually solve the problems? And even when I do see people who are like early adopters of Agile on the team, that's my strength. I capitalize upon those people. I really need them to be able to spread that positive energy on the team to help those who are struggling to actually see that this process can actually work. So for me, it's just about the mindset. Opportunities for learning every day, improvement. It's about continuous improvement. Otherwise, there's no reason doing this.
So what I'm picking up, just to focalize what you said, I love it, and you use the term true agility, which is really a big thing for me, which some of you here know, especially Mike Business, my good friend. Basically allowing for a culture, and Tim probably support that, where you have micro coaches, apart from being on your functional role as maybe a developer or a product owner, except for Scrum Master, who's really formally a coach, right? Or an agile coach, if you will, allowing that culture of multi-coaching within an organization where everyone is sort of not only harnessing the knowledge and experience, but also transferring additional cross-functional knowledge across other team members and thus growing.
Absolutely. An example of that is one of the big item on our transformation backlog now. If I could share this with the rest of the team, how the Lean Agile Center of Excellence is working. We're developing champions from within the DMV. Todd and I, we're not going to be there forever. We now understand the problem, but we're empowering people to be able to solve the problems when we're no longer the DMV.
That's wonderful. So practical application, academic application, and also philosophical application, Todd. I mean, you have all the three trifecta, right? And the room for growth as an Agilist is just enormous.
It's good, yeah.
All right, let's go to Jamie from Vita.
Yes, I've been trying to help some information about product owners with some of the people on my team. What are some other good resources other than scrum.org? Because when somebody's putting a product owner, I think a lot of people end up with the Scrum Master training, but they don't end up with a lot of the coverage for product owner. Are there some other good resources of reading material?
Have you gone through, like, there is a product owner training? Have you gone through that yet?
Yes, I've gone through that. But I'm just more, since I am a Scrum Master and somebody on my team is trying to be one, I'm trying to direct them to some more reading to assist them with new responsibilities.
Gotcha. One I know one website that I go to a lot for product related is Roman Pilcher. Let me put it in the let me see if I can. It's either Pitchler or Pilcher. I always get it wrong. Does anyone know? Roman
Pitch.
Hold on. It is. Yep. It's Pitchler. RomanPitchler.com. I've been following this guy for a long time, and he I'm going to paste it right into the chat. He has a lot of great articles, videos, guides, you name it. I don't know, Ariyo, any of the other coaches have any other resources that you go to?
Yeah, the product. Oh, I'm sorry. I think Tim wanted to go.
I'm sorry. This is Tim again. So I just put the gentleman's name, Marty Kagan, Cagan. Very good product guy. Maybe not so much on product ownership, but he's brilliant in the product space.
Right. And a lot of new organizations are doing that, maybe modern product development techniques, how to approach even your team, how to do customer segmentation, how to do market research. The product school is a very good resource for that. They do organize conferences. They have like a podcast which you can listen to. They also have articles which they publish almost every week. I think Gerard, I recommended one to Gerard that was really good, the Pragmatic Product Owner. That's also really good. They have like tons of resources that you can leverage almost every week. New things come out, and they work to develop new product owners. So as these product owners work with different organizations, they bring back the experiences, they interview them, and people get to learn from their challenges and how they're solving them.
Right. And also in addition to that, so like at the DMV, we currently have a Scrum Master and a product owner community of practice. And it's great. It so far, I think it's been going really, really well. And so a lot of times, obviously they can learn from each other, with one of the coaches in the room to help provide details as well.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. I'm going to invoke executive privilege. Last call. Right. Well, then I'm going to take over for just a moment and introduce Andre, whom we've been hearing from here for a little bit. Andre Karpov, also known as Coach Dre from RVA. There you go. 20 plus years of experience in various business and technology domains that provides nonprofit and public sector technology consulting services. Andre provides strategic advisory and agile transformation consulting under his company Hire the Best LLC and his brand True Agility RVA. Andre also serves on multiple nonprofit boards locally and nationally. He's been involved with the CAAC planning team for several years now. And if you still doubt his nerd cred, his dog's name is Princess Leia. And I can't mention a dog without showing the picture. So here's Princess Leia. And Andre, take it away.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm truly humbled to be part of this group, transforming Agile for good and seeing our state government agencies use it. So I'm going to share the retro board that I've created for you. It's nothing complex, as you have already understood. I like to make Agile fun, but productive. 3 pillars that I always rely on: inclusivity, creativity, and productivity. I believe if those 3 are included, if we include all the folks that really want to make a difference, they're passionate about how they want to do it in a non-standard way, we will achieve productivity and there will be autonomy and cross-functional approach. So with that in mind, we have this board. Hopefully you can all see it.
Yes,
Can you?
sure can.
You can? Okay, awesome. And now you also need the link. So, first the trailer, then the movie. And there it is in the chat for you. That we should have enough capacity for everyone on the call. We actually planned it for, I think, up to 300 people, but this time I see 78. So you should be able, when you get in there, I'm going to show you, remembering my script that we practiced. So once you plug in the link in the browser, if you're not a Retro app user, you should get a simple login like this, guest username. So you would just put Mickey Mouse, for example, right? You agree to the terms, sign in as a guest. You don't have to log in if you don't have one. And there you have it. You will be immediately there. And you should be able to start adding your stickies to the relevant column. I'm going to go back to my admin view. And it's going to dynamically update as you add those cards. This can be totally anonymous if you want to. You can name yourself any way you want and give us any constructive criticism that you'd like. The whole process of retrospection is for us to improve, obviously. If you currently don't do a retrospection in your agency or on your team, we highly encourage you to do that. You have wonderful folks like Tim, Todd, Ariyo, and everybody else, and Stephen, Colby. So everybody's here to help you in many different ways within the state, of course. Okay, so we're getting some feedback that videos were interesting to reinforce. Yes, so picture says 1,000 words. We can definitely tell that. People seem to like polls. Ability to interact in large groups. And also, if you notice, a lot of topics today had to do with teams and really defining agility within teams and focusing sort of on that mid or micro level, right? I think that's where the true beauty of Agile is born and is evolved within an organization in an inverted Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as I call it, where you have true servant leadership for that diagram, I think that Tim was showing. So yeah, that's something I noticed as well. Focus on teamwork and teams. Okay, great answers. Interacting with others. I'm going to go into what didn't go well and keep adding everywhere, folks. Okay, so there were some issues with the polls, I guess, or something was not showing up after they were entered. Nick, do you want to comment a little bit more about that, just so we get the gist? Nick Minetti, right? I'm guessing? From Department of Wildlife Resources?
Yeah, I remember when Stefan was mentioning that people didn't see, he wasn't seeing people participate. And then I went down and hit submit and it jumped up once. I was like, oh, you have to complete the entire survey before he can see it. That makes sense. But I didn't, I heard a couple of times people made it sound like they were just going in the order of the questions as we went through that intro. And I think, I just kind of got lost in the idea that I was like, I went through the questions and why isn't he seeing the results? Only 11 people? Well, that's kind of weird. And I went down to the bottom, hit survey, and went to 12, and I was like, oh.
I hear you. Yeah, we might have one other thing that I noticed, Stephen, when you were going through those polls, we might have gone through them just a little bit too fast because we're trying to maybe take screenshots and see them. But then again, we were trying to allocate enough time for the presenters. So from that standpoint, maybe it's a good idea if Microsoft Forms allows that, given that some participants are outside the agency system, some are within, to post the results in externally accessible page, something like that.
All right, so here's where I say to you what I've said to others in these kinds of events: type, don't talk. we lose the context if it's not written down on the board somewhere. So let's capture that.
Yeah, I was going to do that. I'm just because you said it's an interaction, so yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that has been added. What could be possibly improved? Longer break. We usually have 15-minute break. Thanks for noting that, Rai or RI. But because we had some additional questions after the first session, we shortened it by 5 minutes to 10.
Yeah, I blame Todd and Ariyo for that.
Justin, your question wasn't really answered. Is that something, Stephen, while this is being filled, we could possibly touch upon Justin's question so he changes to smiley face?
Sure.
Justin, the floor is all yours.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I was really looking at, because that is a real problem that I've seen in teams, is decision-making ability in a timely fashion, right? And I agree, sorry, I should have said there was a partial answer, because I agree that there is some vulnerability and trust that psychological safety that plays into that. That is a big part of it as well, to be fair. What I was really looking for is like tools I've used in the past for light frame voting frameworks include like Fist of Five or Roman voting, just to quickly come to consensus on decision points or just general ideas or questions that teams has. Is there anything beyond that you could recommend, like specific practices or tools at the team level? That's what I was really getting at.
Hey, Justin, this is Barbara, because and it might be more as general as what you just gave. Is your situation more geared towards the managing of the work from the sprint backlog, or is it more directive on just the dynamics of the team outside of the backlog?
It's not specific to the backlog, Barbara. It could be anytime the team needs to make an important
anything
decision.
From do we want to do lunch on Wednesday?
Yeah, right. Even those
I know
decisions could paralyze the team.
I was feeling you, so I was trying to see if that's the direction that you were going.
So one, I have it next to me. I'll see if I can find it quick. But one of the things I know we covered in our training, well, I'm going to flip through papers, but there's that getting to yes framework. Have you heard of that?
Yes. No, I have not.
Okay. I should have found the page before I spoke up, but I will find it quick. I'm flipping through my book, but the idea behind it is in our class, I think we used an example of, you have two people on the team and one would like the window open to be, get some fresh air, and the other would like the window closed because of their allergies. Right. And how do you get them to sort of come to a common decision? And it's called getting to yes. And now I'm on the spot flipping through a big book here of training material, but I believe it's called getting to yes.
Okay. If you can just find a link to it and share it later, that's
I will.
fine.
Once
I'll read through it.
It's something that we do in training. It's not like our technique.
Okay. And just to be fair, I've used different techniques with different results. So I'm just trying to find the best approach, if there is one, and maybe there's not. Maybe it's context. Yeah.
Yep. I will find it. And who asked that? Just so I could.
Yeah, that's Justin Sykes, Todd.
Justin. Okay.
Justin's on my team. So Mike Vistos, you have the suggestion about liberating structures. Did you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, it is a great set of different techniques you can use with different teams to help break some of the decision-making conflicts maybe that come up. It's a good set of tools to look at. And there, again, Justin, it's not all for one answers, but it is a great toolbook to take a look at and learn maybe some different new techniques about.
Cool. I'll take a look. Some new reading. Thank you.
It's a tools that I use pretty often.
Okay.
Something else, guys, I've noticed while you were discussing, looking at all the responses, and I'm just putting thumbs up on some of the ones that seem kind of unique so that we just maybe look at them a little bit more from a priority focus, but all of them matter, of course. I've noticed one was great way to refresh Agile practices. Now, I know Harsh, a good friend of mine from Scrum RVA. Harsh, I don't know if you are representing government agencies or you're just outsider, but I think that's a good point, because for some folks on this call, we don't really know how many, but any of you working in the state government where you're really sort of just touching upon Agile and you'd love to refresh your practices and you're more infused with this whole idea of Agile mindset and frameworks, I think this is a great place to sort of get that injection of transformation, and then go to your team leads and to your Agile coaches and ask them for support and more involvement. So early adopters, if you will, for your personal self and for your teams. We also have seen that some people would love breakout sessions and more discussions. Some even offered the idea of in-person or hybrid. So that's, I think we should definitely consider that. The previous one we did, Stephen, maybe if you just want to briefly talk about that, I think the one that I missed due to capacity, but where you were part of a larger Commonwealth conference or something like that, where you had a 1 hour session.
Yeah, so that was at COVID's, which is VITA's annual IT conference, and we did a 1 hour presentation at this year's COVID's. We have done 2 hybrid CAACs. That was back at numbers 4 and 5, I believe, and we have polled about doing it since then. And in general, what we find is that people would rather not. When we ask the question, would you come if we had the conference in person, then the response that we get is people are much more likely not to attend if we do it in person. I'm absolutely willing to poll again and find out where that would land for the future, and maybe as we get further and further away from the pandemic, that people are more willing to do that. But so far, the sentiment has been, let's keep this remote, and we'll keep reaching the largest number of people. So.
Yeah, I agree with Stephen on that. I do have quite a few hybrid mode events that I attend, and I can tell you, unless we really plan and invest into owls and other kind of electronic creatures in the room, as I call them, test everything out and make sure that both the on-premise or in-person participants are accounted and included for, and the ones online, and there's really good interaction of sound and video and everything, it can become really sort of kind of unpleasant chaos where people are overlooked and will get more comments like Nick posted or not Nick, I'm sorry, Justin posted where, my question wasn't really answered, and we'll have to be dealing with that.
Yep. So it's certainly something that the planning team talks about at the beginning of every session. When we're getting ready for the next one, we will absolutely have the conversation. Do we want to do this one in person or not? So it's always on our minds. Well, Andre, why don't you take just another minute or two and see if there's anything else you want to glean from the comments that we have here, and then we'll move to wrap up the morning.
Well, I'll give that opportunity to someone from our wonderful attendees team. So anybody who has posted anything here that would like to further elaborate on that, maybe just sort of give us a thought-provoking idea on what to focus on for the next one. It's also a good way to display courage for Scrum, putting yourself on the spot. Well, if not, then one thing I would love to encourage everyone, and again, this is not mandatory, we're agile, right, in as much as we can be, but we'd love for a lot of you guys for the future conferences to be on camera as much as possible. You obviously sometimes have to turn it off, that's fine, it's a big conference, but having more interactability, seeing more of your wonderful faces, and having more of you speak and participate would make it more lively, given that it's a virtual format. So just something to consider that I think I've observed for a while now.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Andre, and everyone. I've got just a couple of things to go through to finish up the morning. The first of all, coming a week from today, Innovate Virginia. It's a full day of Agile training, networking, and food with a reception and a raffle at the end of the day. It's a week from today. And good news, we have made arrangements with Agile Richmond to provide any of you attending today's conference to be able to sign up for Innovate Virginia at the early bird price, which is a 20% discount on the registration fee. So the conference is held at the Virginia Crossings Hotel and Conference Center that's in Glen Allen. And I absolutely encourage you to spend a day with our Agile Richmond friends. I have attended Innovate VA for years now, and I always find it to be time well spent. The website is innovatevirginia.com/registration. The promo code is CAAC15. So we hope to see you all there. And then just a few closing comments. Thanks to each of you for spending the morning with us again. Believe me, we do not underestimate the investment that you and your agency are making by your being with us for a morning. And we really do appreciate your being here. Also, my heartfelt thanks to the members of the CAAC planning team. Without this group, these events would not happen. And if you'd like to take a more active role in upcoming Agile conferences, then we are always looking for new members. So just drop us a line. We have an email address, caac@vsp.virginia.gov. So thanks again, folks. Our next conference, CAA 16, will be on Friday, July the 11th. So mark your calendars. We look forward to seeing you all then. Have a good morning, folks.